Welcome back to another Party Champ devlog. I have made great progress on the game since the last video. If you're new around here, consider subscribing to the channel and go wishlist the game if you haven't already, link in the description. Now onto what's new in my party board game where you throw your dice at other players and compete in chaotic mini-games between rounds. I have been mainly working on finishing fully and polishing the content on the board and in the main menu. It now feels a lot more finished, like a real indie game, which I didn't think would be the case when I started this project, but here we are thousands of hours later. Along with a huge amount of polish and bug fixing on the board, I made some visual upgrades to the player characters. Some commenters in previous videos highlighted how they were a bit static and needed to be more animated, which I couldn't help but agree with. Animation is not something I'm the most experienced with, and it tends to be a huge time sink, and I gotta delegate my time budget responsibly, or this game is never gonna be finished. But I think I found a nice middle ground. There's 4 stages to this upgrade process. First, I made the players' heads rotate to look in the direction of whatever's currently in focus on the board. So whether that's the player currently moving on the board, or whatever dice or item is currently in play. I can set that look direction to a given position, or even to a given object in the scene. And when I don't have it set, they just look forward, and I limited their head movement so they can't twist their neck 180 degrees. Secondly, I made the characters' eyes scale up and down when they blink, which makes them feel a lot less static and more animated. Next, I added multiple new eye and mouth states to each pair of eyes and mouths in the game, allowing you to switch between different facial emotions to express yourself on the board and in minigames, which allows me to set different facial expressions when you land on tiles or take damage or respawn, making the characters feel much more expressive even if you don't do it yourself. And lastly, I added the ability to control your head movement whenever you feel you need to. So now it's possible to accurately express the strong emotions you feel towards your friends on the board in the heat of battle. I'm still working on an overhaul to the action emote system, so you'll be able to equip multiple action emotes at a time instead of just one, so that will come later. Previously, the players would rotate their bodies to always be facing the camera, and it felt kind of jarring. These new changes I think definitely give a lot more personality to the characters, and should hopefully make for some funny interactions on the board with the new emote system. The board that's planned to be included in the demo, Champ Coast, has also seen some changes to it. Restructuring of the layout and improvements to the visuals. The map is now a bit smaller and more compact with this new dynamic crowd that reacts to the changes on the board during gameplay. The spectators are these little dice people that are not only good for performance relative to having a crowd of animated champ characters, but also they don't take away too much focus from other elements on the board, as they kind of fade into the outskirts of the map. The Diamond Merchant NPC on the board, which is where you purchase diamonds from, like stars in Mario Party, has been replaced with this more thematically appropriate diamond safe, which you spend coins to open. The first round of the board now has this grace period, disabling the dice throw, which feels incredibly necessary while everyone is tightly packed up against each other at the beginning of the game. I'm not sure I want every game to start with complete chaos, but I'll make sure to include an option in the lobby settings to disable the round 1 grace period if some players want to. So one of the main things I worked on the past month were these chance encounter tiles, which, if you notice the similarity to other board games, they're basically chance cards from Monopoly, or maybe a better example from another party game. They're kind of like Bowser tiles from Mario Party games. You land on them and there's like 30 different things that can happen. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, and some can affect the entire board. There's 31 total planned. 2 of them require a bounty system, which isn't going to be in the demo, so I've got 29 to implement right now. Some of them are more programming heavy and only require minimal visual effects, and some are more visually distinct and I'll spend an entire day doing the animations for them. I think it's important to have a lot of boring ones. You don't want something crazy happening every time you land on one of these tiles, and I think it makes the more unique ones more special when they do happen. And I don't have the time budget to make every single one visually impressive. So there's a lot of basic ones to start us off. 3 different chance encounters for receiving coins. And the way I decided to do this was to make a red variation of the coin bag that spawns when you land on a coin tile. A small change, but I think it makes it feel just a little bit more custom and tailored to the tile type. And then I have the inverse, which takes away coins from the player. For this I made a slight variation on the code for dropping coins. I made a simple puff of red smoke particle effect, which I ended up using in a lot of other encounters too. This next one is more or less the same as the other receive coin ones, but I decided to give it a custom model to distinguish it. Some of the more crazy ones have more character. This one's a personal favorite. It teleports all players on the board to the same tile and gives you all party hats. They disappear once it's your turn, so enjoy them while they last. The main way you get cards is by landing on these card tiles, but I thought it was necessary to add a chance encounter to receive a card too. Cards are like passive items in a roguelike. You can hold 3 at a time and they even stack their effects. But you can lose them as well. And if you do manage to collect 3 in a match, it can really change how you play, and feel pretty awful when you lose them all too. I got some chance encounters for getting items as well, with appropriate red item packages. and some to lose items too. Wormhole Warp teleports you to a random tile on the board. For this, I was able to reuse the teleport effect made earlier for the other teleport encounter. These visual effects can often be the main time sink for making these chance encounters, so it's a good thing to reuse them whenever I can. Some of them, like Keep 'em Rolling, which lets you roll again on your turn, are more code heavy and require much more exception handling. On to easier ones, which heal the player different amounts of health points, and ones to damage the player for different amounts of health points. I should probably make it clear now that you'll be able to disable any of these chance encounters that you don't like. I understand some might seem a little unfair, and you can just turn them off in the settings beforehand if you don't like playing with them. If a player is dead, then they are not counted as on the board until they respawn on their turn, whether that turn is in the current round or on the next round. Which, yes, if you didn't already know, you can die on the board and respawn back at the home tile, either from environmental factors or from items used by other players. Now, I've spoken about items in a previous video, but there's some new ones and updates to some of the old ones, both in gameplay and visuals. These are just some of the items in the demo, so there's plenty more to come in the full game. The Cherry Bomb Pie is an explosive throwable with heavy splash damage. As with all throwable items, you can bounce it off bouncer obstacles like umbrellas and hit bonus targets with it. The Tomato, or Tomato for you Americans out there, is a basic throwable that does minor damage. That's useful if maybe there's two bonus targets you want to hit on the same turn, or if you want to do a little extra damage to somebody as well as hitting them with your dice. The Skull Fuse Bomb is a new type of item that can be thrown and then detonated manually when in range of another player. It does explosive splash damage, but not as much as the Cherry Bomb Pie, and it rolls forward after thrown, which I guess might be more or less useful depending on the terrain of the map. The Slime Jar item has seen some much needed visual updates. This is another throwable item that does do bonk damage, but its main effect is the slime splash it leaves behind that slimes players in range. A slimed player's next dice roll is halved, unless they use a healing item like the syringe that removes status effects. The Gold Magnet is another new item. Point a large golden magnet at other players and extract a percentage of their total coins. If you've played a game called Pummel Party, you might have noticed the similarities with the magnet item in that game. I thought it was a pretty flawless execution, and I didn't really know how to do a coin stealing item better, so I recreated it with some minor tweaks. I made some updates to the visuals of the two dice modifier items, the Iron Dice and the Diamond D20. The Diamond D20 replaces your regular dice for one turn and gives you a 1 in 20 chance of receiving a diamond, or possibly losing coins. It also does extra bonk damage. The Iron Dice does significantly more bonk damage and can be thrown through bubbles. Bubble Juice is another item that grants the player a shield that blocks the next instance of item damage or environmental damage. It's really just any damage that's not from the default dice, with the trade-off of reducing your throwing range. So a big advantage of the Iron Dice is that it's not influenced by the bubble. And because it's a dice item, it can bonk players multiple times, so even though it does less damage than some of the other items, it can potentially do a lot more damage if you aim it correctly. The last new item I worked on, which was a giant pain in my side to implement, was the Devastator. The first vehicle item to be added to the board. It moves the player forward 10 tiles, flattening any players and demolishing any structures in its path. You'll automatically dismount when interacting with an NPC tile, like a safe or vending machine. When I said it demolishes structures, I'm talking about these purchasable tiles, which you can build a toll gate on or hotel. It just completely resets them. Even if you own them, once the Devastator makes contact with them, it's gone. So use it with caution. As I said, this item was a pain to implement. The visuals, 3D model textures were all fine. The problems came with the back-end implementation. Just a quick explanation of the main gameplay code. The board system operates as a queue of states, so at the beginning of a turn, it slots in the states necessary for executing that player's turn, and then adds another state at the end to start the next turn. So if a player dies on their turn, which can happen in any game state because of the dynamic board, then the remaining states are removed and a new state is injected to handle the player's death, and the state changes are synced across the network. This was a system I came up with to handle the dynamic board gameplay in an online multiplayer setting, where it's both real-time but also turn-based. There's quirks and limitations with this. I think if I was to redo this system, I would make it a bit more flexible, but I'm kind of stuck with it now, so I gotta just make do. So doing this vehicle item, it needs to slot in an additional movement state to move the player on the board. But slotting in a movement state opens the door to multiple new states being added as well, all with their own exceptions to handle, like at a crossroads when you have to choose which path to go down, or at an NPC interaction which stops the player as they pass over a tile opening a menu, which depending on whether you interact with the NPC, it should dismount you from your vehicle, or if you ignore the NPC, it should add another state to allow you to continue moving on the board. And situations like, although you're immune to damage while in the vehicle, if you finish your run and land on a dangerous tile, it should wait for you to die rather than moving to a roll state and letting you continue your turn. So there was a lot of exceptions to handle and a lot of playtesting to be done, but good news is the next vehicle item I add should be relatively easy to implement. Oh, and I almost forgot updates to the banana peel, which cuts your turn short when you run over it and bestows upon you the bozo cap until your next turn. The bozo cap used to stop you from receiving the next turn's tile reward as well as the current turn, but I just got rid of that completely, so the bozo cap is purely cosmetic. It's purely to make you feel bad for the mistake of slipping on this banana peel. And the mousetrap got a nice visual upgrade, now looking visibly unstable on the tile it's placed on, ready to damage the next player to walk over it. As well as working on the board, I also made updates to the main menu and lobby system, mainly just on visual polish and menu navigation, as well as some much needed scope management. Previously, I talked about having this lobby system where players can join and run around while you set up the game, but after deliberating on that system for a while now, I came to the conclusion that it would be too much work to fully implement and lead to a lot of problems in menu navigation. So as I said, scope management. I'm now going for a more simplified main menu and lobby system with an updated visual style, with hopefully more intuitive menu navigation so that anyone can boot up a game with their friends with ease. I understand most people won't care about adjusting the nitty-gritty of the game settings, especially when you're a new player, so I tried to make setting up a game as streamlined as possible, with navigation from creating a lobby, to choosing a game mode, to choosing the rule set, and then straight into the final lobby settings to start the game, with the default rule set being on by default, which automatically adjusts game settings based on the number of players and the mode chosen for a balanced experience. Players that don't want to mess around with changing to the optimal settings based on their player numbers or map chosen don't have to. I'm still working on some of these menus, so they are still a bit of a work in progress. I reused parts of the promotional material and Steam capsule art to make these game mode icons, which I think fit really nicely into the art style of the menus. It's always nice to find additional uses for artwork that most people are only going to see once on Steam before they download the game. The cosmetics were finalized for the demo, which really just means I settled on which ones to include and updated the visuals of some of them. So a few additional cosmetics can now have their colors changed, and I updated some of the textures of some of the skin materials. I do plan on there being a kind of a shop in the full game that you can spend diamonds on or some other kind of currency. It's not like a paid currency, just like a currency you earn in game, but that system still needs to be figured out fully. This brings us closer to the release of the demo, which, although there is still much to do, substantial progress has been made in recent months. And if you want to be kept up to date, subscribe to the channel and go wishlist the game. Thank you for watching. There's more to come very soon.